Alrighty, onwards with this nightmare piece. Not too much left to do. Basically it's going to make this part a little bit bigger. Or thinner even, so just bring it down a bit and then we'll do the same again on the right side. Just to make it a bit more even all the way around. Yeah, it's just really minor details. If you want a tight time budget and that kind of thing, then you can just do it roughly and just skip over these kind of parts. We need a edge loop down the bottom here. So I'm just going to bring the loop we've already got down. Double check the reference. We don't particularly need these edge loops, they're not really doing anything, so we'll just collapse these points, select both loops, and then just delete them. Coolio. Next we're basically getting on with the extrusion from the side of this piece, which attaches it to the mudguard. We'll just get rid of this, we don't really need it. Basically just do a little inset there and then just scale it in. Yeah, we'll just scale it back just to make it flat. And then we'll just rotate it back round and then we'll just scale it back up again. Add in our edge loop. And now we're just got to try and find a way to attach the little crease point and this bit without making any pinches and that kind of thing. It should be all kinds of fun. You're going to try about 10 different topology methods. You eventually get one that works properly. basically you're having that massively long stretched quad. It creates the crease in there at the top. So we just weld that up to make sure it goes a bit lower down so it's not apparent. Still, there's a minor like bubble there. I was just trying to flatten that out. Just going to try and make a big curve that went from there to the extrusion, but it didn't really look very good. So let's try something else. So let's try looping them back on themselves. I think because it's such a small space, then it's just going to cause pinching like it does. Make sure everything's welded. So it was fairly flat, but there was actually a little crease going left and right because the edges are a bit close together. So I was trying to push this up so it makes it less apparent. It's looking a bit better. Basically just loosen everything up a bit just so it blends together really. I'm also going to try a little edge loop trick here. Occasionally it can work for some things if you just leave the edge loops without actually finishing them. I think it creates quite a bit of pinching on this piece. It's not too bad, but there's a little bit of pinching. Just trying a few different things, see what works really. Just basically flicking backwards and forwards between undo and redo, just so you can see if you made any changes to the cylindrical shape. Making sure the top bit's flat. Just going to collapse this just for the time being, just so it makes things a little easier when we're doing the next bit. So basically just cap the top. Basically just going to be adding kind of a semicircle to the top just to round it off. So basically just select 2 polys, you hinge from edge at 180 and use an even amount of segments. Pick the middle edge, check to make sure it looks alright, press OK, and then make sure you press delete when you come out of that to delete the poly you bridged over. And then you need to delete that bottom face as well, which you can do before or after. And because this wasn't quite flat, there's a few odd polys left, so just weld them up. We have a random floating vertice, so let's get rid of that. Basically, because we haven't got the geometry to support some proper edge loops on this piece, which you usually should use if you can. But for this particular bit, we should use a little cheat way. Essentially, we're using an inset. It'll give you the edge loops for the most part. It's not the preferred method of getting the hard edges, but kind of like a cheap way out if you can't fit them in the shape. So it's not really going to change the shape much by adding in all the extra edge loops. That's not really worth the time. So just add this loop back in. Can quad it up if you want. Essentially there's no errors on it, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Just going to position this a little bit better. Basically a few little unfinished parts around the piece that we've left along the way, so we're just kind of going to go around to each one of them and just kind of patch everything up, fill up all the holes, and sort out any errors. Just dragging and undoing just to kind of match up to see where it intersects, just to kind of pre-line it up. Well, I was going to use an L loop there, but again, I'm just going to leave the end gun. It's not causing any problems on a flat surface, so I just leave it there. It's fine. Quite well hidden as well, so no one's probably going to see it either. Just deleting all the edges just to make the edge between the 2 points straight. Just double checking they're all welded. Basically just going to close off this whole back part. I haven't got any reference images of the back of this piece because all the brake disc and brake calipers and all that stuff's all in the way, so if anyone has a picture of it, then you're more than welcome to model it that way. I basically just made this back part up. general aim is pretty much just to fill up this entire back part and just roughly get it all quadded up. Yeah, and basically need to do this part on the other side as well. Instead of doing it the same thing again, we're just going to copy this bit and just mirror it on the other side. Usually just been saving after every video, so it's worthwhile saving your work. So I don't think I mentioned that before. I end up going through like hundreds of saves during this tutorial. So basically just made a copy of it there, inverted the selection to delete it, leaves us with our original selection with the original pivot point, and then you can just mirror that across. This will always be an element selection until you welded it, so you can still check which parts are the original mesh and which ones you want to weld to the new bits. Basically just trying to match the topology with what we've done on the other side and delete everything else that's in the middle. Probably should have made room for the new piece first instead of trying to do them both together. There's a slight difference between these two sides, so we'll kind of just do this bit on its own. Could have used a straight line across there, but doing it that way, it gives us a bit more of the curve at the back, even though near enough no one's going to see it. So if this was my model, I'd probably just leave the whole of the back just open. Because you're probably never ever going to see it. And even if you leave it open, when the light hits it, it's going to show black anyway. So it'll just look like it's a shadowed area. But for the sake of the tutorial, I just wanted to make sure every piece was like fully completed. Just in case I kind of skip over something if I left it. But if I fully complete it, then I know I've not missed anything. A bit of an angle difference here, so we're just going to have to move this part over a bit. Again, just using the poly selection and then grow. not going to quite work using a straight line, so I'm just going to have to change it a little bit. I think we may have make-planed a few extra vertices or edges. So just kind of clean out now. All kinds of inside-out polys and overlapping edges and whatnot. So I think the easiest way is just to delete it all and make some new edges. Just start adding our edges back in and we can start welding this all up. It's not going to quite fit. think we actually make the cylinder flush with the side of this piece, so it actually goes a bit of slightly different topology on this side. It works out fairly nicely because the edges just get cancelled into the 3 into 1, so it shouldn't cause any errors, which it doesn't. So basically just continue adding in edges and just welding them up. Should be fairly simple. Because this whole surface can be flat, we don't particularly need them edges. Just going to try and get rid of what we can. Yeah, it's getting there. Just basically just finish up all these edges, just basically bridge or target word them up. So spacing these out by hand, like occasionally you can just select the polys and just use a relaxed paintbrush. Essentially, just like space them out for you, really. Usually a bit quicker than doing it by hand. That's near enough done, I think. Not going to go into too much trouble about the back, because again, no one's going to see it. So just do a quick make planar just for the sake of it. It's somewhat flat at the back. We are almost at the end of this nightmare piece. There's a few more bits to go, just cutting in a few holes and just cleaning a few bits up, really. Yeah, we're nearly there. Cool, see you in the next few bits. Nearly at the end of this piece. I think it was just this part and then one more to finish. I was basically looking over the ref, and these centre circles were a little bit too big, I think, so we're just going to scale them out a bit. So again, just like in the border, change the poly, and just grey the selection out. We don't want this gap in the middle to increase, so we're just going to have to deselect those, I think. Yeah. So we can just move them manually afterwards. make sure when you're scaling you're using the second shaded part of the scale tool, which would do it on the 2-axis rather than the 3. So we don't want to do any on the Z-axis at all. So basically just make the outer ring a bit thinner. Then we'll just readjust our circle splines. We'll just fix up any problems here. Just making sure the edges are a consistent distance between the edge and the circle spline. Okay, there's supposed to be 2 holes in here which drill straight through. So I'll just get on to making those. There's 2 fairly big holes, they fill up most of the space. I actually just took a rough guess of how many edges there were when the spline on 2 will equal the 12-sided, and we actually need 14, so I'll just convert to poly and I'll just use the use auto grid and just draw it on top. Just do a little rotate so the edges are somewhat aligned. Then we'll just attach that piece. And we can just select both borders and bridge it occasionally like that. The bridge will break, so just bridge a single edge and and you can do a mass bridge afterwards on the border. It is actually causing errors because the edges are at two acute angles. So it's quite a lot of stretching, so I just have to try and sort that out. We actually need this circle to be bigger than it is now. I think when we make it bigger it causes some pinching and whatnot. So we'll have to find a different way around that. You can see some little pinching artifacts appearing on the right side. It's mainly because we've got a number of edges, close proximity, and then being stretched around a circle shape. So what we can do is just collapse the three edges into one, like we've done a number of times, and then it should make things easier. So basically just undo all that. We'll just get rid of that for the time being. And then we just weld up the edges so we're left with one instead of three. And same again on there. So that leaves us with a 10-sided rather than 14, which makes things a bit easier. Basically just bridge across there just to make a flat surface. Don't actually need any form, it's literally just the surface to draw on. So select top face, do grow, delete, and then just flip bottom face. And then we just need to attach it. Instead of bridging this piece, because we've already done the inset, we'll just do the target weld. Just try and find the position that has the least skewing of the vertices. That's a bit closer to the size that we're after. really didn't cross my mind I could just collapse these 3 vertices so they're not actually doing anything in the middle. We'll get to that in a sec. I was just doing the extrusion here, but I didn't factor in the fact that it's on an angle. So we'll have to redo this again. The bolts would essentially be pointing upwards if they were like that. Basically just getting a rough estimate of the angle we're going to have to cut in. So basically just try and make the bottom lines parallel with the bottom of the piece. Then we know it's straight. So now it should be at the correct angle. Instead of doing the extrude, we can just scale it in and then just snap it to the previous, to the point we made on the other side. This is actually the correct shape that we've made here. For some reason I was looking at it and it didn't look right. I tried rotating them down so as if the bolt was going down that way. They might be that way, I'm not sure actually, but they didn't look right either. So I think I ended up going back to what I had before. So the bolts would stick out more than the bottom than they would at the top, but on the reference image they're both level on each side. Just to make sure, I just do the do the instance trick, just so we can work on flat levels rather than doing it at an angle. So now I can just pull it back straight and just scale as we normally would. Just makes things a bit quicker. Essentially makes what we made before. So now that I realise it is actually correct, then we'll just make a copy of that. Again, just convert to poly and then grow. Yeah, just make a copy, invert, delete, get rid of the turbo smooth, and just mirror it because the pivot point's in the middle and it just aligns up perfectly. Near enough. So I just delete the faces that are in the way. Once we attach it, and then we can just weld it up. A stray vertice in the middle, so I always just get rid of the polys just to get them out of the way. And just make sure you weld everything up. Near enough there, I'll just tidy this up a little bit. That's looking all good. Now we just have to make the holes on the other side. Just get rid of them faces. Basically left with 14 again, which is the same as the other side, so we'll just weld these up. And in the middle as well, which should leave us with the same 10 sides. So it should match up nice and easily. Basically just needed a surface to work roughly from, just so I can move this back. Yeah, I'm just going to slide it back until the vertices hit the edge. I think that will do. So just use element select to get rid of that piece we copied. And then we'll just get welding this up. Near enough spot on, we'll just do a little bit of tweaking to clean it up a little bit. Basically just use the end result so we can see what we're affecting. Yeah, it's an awkward angle, I just have to adjust the edge loop manually. Just switching between the edge and face constraint. We just need to fix up this little corner. A little bit of a crease going on. I think that'll do. So again, we'll just do the same as we did on the other side with the flipping of the hole. So there's no point modelling it twice. So again, just border, convert to face, grow. Control V to copy. And just Control I to switch, delete. Take out Turbo Smooth, then mirror it. Then we just target weld it up again. And we'll just do a little bridge in the middle. A little bit of a dent there, so we'll just scale that with the edge constraint on, just to flatten it out. And that's nice and clean. Now again, on the list of bits we've left to finish off, should the hole in the bottom and the whole crease we made at the sides there. Just need to fill in the middle of that. we'll just start with this edge by pulling it in. And basically just need to add in our edge loops when necessary and then just weld up the ends. We won't bother with a loop for this one, we'll just leave it as a cut and then when we're finished we'll just sort them out. So just do the same again on the other side. So just do the same again, just select the inside faces. Then just drag it across and weld it up. And because we got the 3 edges there, might as well just collapse them and remove the rest. And it's the same again on the other side. So just add an edge loop in the middle and just join it up. So it's looking like a much nicer edge now. We've getting a bit some thickness. So basically just copying this piece, and then we'll just copy them pieces over to the other side. Saves us having to do all that again. Just using the same trick with the selection and Control V. Invert and delete. And we can just attach and weld it up. Just need to fix up a few odd little bits before we do that. Must have been during the make plane or earlier it overlapped the edges. Basically just done a little weld on all of it, and then we just target welding up all the areas, just using a border select to debug, as it were. Just cause if there's lines going into the mesh like that, then you know there's an open edge. So it looks like we've got them all. So just add in some thickness to the bottom bit as well. See, if you had a view like that, then you would see inside the bolt just a little bit. I think we're just going to add in a bunch of loops and then just connect it all up. basically just want to do that selection as well as the circle spline we had. I think we're just going to double check the circle at the bottom, because now we've added in the extra edges, it's not going to be a sharp edge. So just double check to make sure it's alright. Just a little bit out, so just make little adjustments. Again, just matching it up to the spline. Just be careful you're not selecting anything that's underneath the circle at all. So you're not destroying the model in the process. Cool, so we've done that, so we can just delete that now. I think that's pretty much it for this piece. So if you manage to do that, you can pretty much model anything. That's a ridiculously stupid piece to make. But yeah, it's probably the worst bit on the bike, so if you got through that, then we should be kind of plain sailing from here. A few other hard bits, but not too bad. So we'll just get on making the rest of this awesome bike.